give the floor to you, Thomas. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, as Annika just said, I am a journalist at Zetland, which is sort of an attempt to reinvent the newspaper for the digital age, you'd say. And I cover climate and sustainability issues, and also write quite a bit about food-related issues. So I'll be moderating the debate for the next 45 minutes or something. And we have quite a nice panel here. We have producers and retailers and people from all sides of this plant-based revolution that's unfolding. And we have Jens Brandt from Bornholm, who I actually talked to some months ago for an article, writing about his very interesting project to try and push plant-based production of these new crops for the industry in Bornholm. Maybe you can just say hi, Jens, if you are there and able to unmute yourself.
Apparently not. I've just I'm trying to get them to unmute now. But Jens, you should be able to unmute yourself now. There should be a pop-up where you can, Or maybe while Jens is struggling with the technical stuff, we can...
Yeah, of course. We also have Thomas Roland, who is head of the CSR at the Coop in Denmark, the big supermarket chain. And we have Frederik Madsen, who is head of secretariat at the Paneldebat, which is an industry organization for the producers making plant-based products. And we have Pim Bent, who is an agricultural expert at the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. So we'll be kind of looking at this from the outside, looking at the industry from the outside, say. So actually, I think I would maybe like to start with asking a question for you, Thomas, because in one of the presentations we heard from the producer side, from Ulrik there, from the organic plant proteins, that he would like you and the retailer side to do more to push these products. So what would your response be to that? Couldn't you actually do quite a lot more in supermarket chains by, you have a lot of advertising going on. You can do a lot with where you put products in the store and so on. So why haven't we seen you do even more than you are doing?
Well, I think first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for a very nice and interesting afternoon. I already learned a lot, even though I haven't had the possibility to read your report, the full report. I think it was some very interesting points that you pointed out, Annika, also earlier on. But then to your answer, Thomas, well, yes, of course we can always do more. But what we do will very often be a reflection of how far we can actually stretch it and still keep our pants on, so to speak, meaning not losing too much money. So it's a constant struggle, also seen from our side, to widen out the plant-based market. And we have actually 4 different strategies to do so, and some of them are maybe not that visible to consumers, but I can just try to explain what we are doing here. I mean, first of all, there's this substitution way of thinking, and that is probably also represented by the presentation from Naturli that we just heard. It's all about making mimic products, you can say, that can replace animal-based products on the plate. There's a growing market for that, and we are constantly sort of widening out the offers on that part of the selection. I have to say though that it's difficult for us in all our supermarket formats to actually have the full range, because if you go to a small countryside shop, there will simply not be the customers for that. But that's one way. Then another thing that we're doing is actually to work with what we call an additional thinking. And that's actually to offer more plant-based products, or simply fruit and vegetables close to where you also have the animal-based products. So instead of going the substitution way, we want to support our customers to actually just fill larger part of the plate with more vegetables or legumes instead of the meat and dairy based products. It's a bit more of a subtle strategy, you can say. Then we have the third strategy that we are using. That's actually the convenience strategy, you can say. That's actually to try to incorporate some of the products that Ulrik, for instance, also showed us earlier today into prepared meals, where consumers do not necessarily have to change any habits at all. I mean, they can just take the salad or take the ready meal and heat it, and it's there, but it's made with plants. So this is also a way we are looking and developing all the time. And then I think there's the fourth way, and maybe the way that many of our most loyal vegan and vegetarian customers are already following, and that's what I call the revolution kitchen, where you're actually serving an audience that doesn't think about having to replace meat and dairy products or trying to use ready meals, but actually are using in cooking. They have all the skills already to cook with real plant-based ingredients, and their kitchen, their plate, their dietary habits simply looks different from other customers. And what we do there, of course, is to make sure that we have the basic products on the shelves. But what we want to focus more on is also to educate consumers. In our every year we launch a new material for the public schools, for instance, and the last 4 years we've been focusing entirely on teaching children how to cook with legumes and vegetables that's all national based or locally based. So that's some of the things that we're doing, but of course we could do more.
Yeah, so you're basically saying there's a limit to how much stuff we can put in the stores and people will buy it.
Well, generally the limit is yes, it's a financial economic limit as to when will we waste too much, when we throw too much away, and but of course we can always stretch it a bit further, and we can try to convince consumers to try it one more time, and then hopefully it will start having some turnover on that shelf space. But otherwise, products are unfortunately replaced again with something that has a better sale. That's kind of the logic of the supermarket. Yeah.
I was wondering, Pim, if maybe you could weigh in here, because you must correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that this sort of plant-based food revolution that we're kind of seeing starting to pick up pace in Denmark has been a little bit more advanced in Sweden for the last few years, and I've personally experienced going into supermarkets in quite small towns in rural Sweden and seeing quite an extensive range of plant-based products, even in places like that, and not just in the big cities. So could you maybe say a little bit about what do you think has been the reason for this? What have been driving this? Why have the Swedes been first movers?
Well, I mean, it's not my expert area, and I'm not sort of super familiar with the Danish context when it comes to vegetarian trend. But like statistically, yes, Sweden kind of tops the list of sort of percentage of the population which is vegetarian in Europe. Denmark is, I think, quite low on that list. So why is that? Well, I mean, there's probably many answers to that question. If I allow myself to guess, one is just I think Sweden is, has been an early adopter when it comes to many sustainability-related issues. We have concepts like flying shame, Sweden. Greta Thunberg is from here. We were early in the organic movement. So there is a tradition in Sweden of that, and I guess the vegetarian trend links into that. But I mean, also, I think few Danes would disagree that Swedes are politically correct, right? And few Swedes would disagree that you Danes, you love your cigarettes, gammeldansk, and your bacon. So I don't know if there's some explanations there too. Maybe we are a more kind of anxious anxious people, trying to latch on to trends, coming trends. But it's but I mean, as you say, there is a distinct difference, at least when you look at the statistics. But what an interesting comment there could be that what we see is that the vegetarian trend in Sweden is now having a negative impact, partly due to it probably on the organic movement or the purchasing of organic food in Sweden. They seem to be it doesn't seem to be strengthening that trend, but rather being a competitor in that trend, and that's obviously worrying for us. Organic agriculture is one of the things we work with, sort of, and it's something we talk about a lot because we see it still has its essential tool in the transformation that we're working towards, and replacing unsustainable meat with monoculture using pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, etc., is not really a step in the right direction. We need to handle climate and biodiversity at the same time. So it's a complicated thing. And when it comes to organics, Denmark has kind of surpassed us. I don't know if it's surpassed us in consumption. I think the numbers are quite simple, and I think we still have more land under agricultural management, organic management, but Denmark has a much better political climate for organic farming than Sweden does. There's not as much polarization on the political spectrum. There seems to be more of a unified view that it's not about sort of organic or conventional, but that organic is an important tool on the way forward. In Sweden, it's a much more polarized debate when it comes to organic. So I think we have a lot to learn from Denmark there too.
All right, I think it's, since we have the whole, thanks for that. And I think since we have the whole producer chain here, we should also try to hear from some of the people trying to get some of the products into the store. And Jens, I see that you are on now. Good to see you. We talked on the phone actually some months ago about you taking the risk with a bunch of other farmers on Bornholm, saying, okay, they are saying they want these new products. Let's try and farm them and see what happens. So first of all, how's it going, and what kind of challenges do you see for someone like you who wants to tap into this trend?
Yeah, well, thank you that I can join here. Yeah, well, to tell about us first, we are 12 farmers. We together grow about 10% of the island of Bornholm. We have 3,000 hectares. We have more farmers that would like to join us. Most of us is conventional. We have had trials this year, about 45 hectares. 35 of the hectares we have grown as ecological. We had the worst harvest on Bornholm in decades, so it was not the best start. But we have got some products, and now the challenge is to sell them and get a price that gives us a profit. And most of us is conventional, and that's what gives us, what we say, some money to play with. And I see a lot of dilemmas in this production. Now, it came through some earlier on, like one ecological cow lead out more CO2 than a conventional. If we reduce the conventional production, actually, we do it better for the climate. And I could sound like a sour old farmer. Maybe I am, but I really want to. I don't care what I make, as long as I can make a living. And if most people want organic and pay the price, I make organic. My dilemma is, like the pork prices, we just, on conventional pork, had the biggest upturn in the 25 years I've been farmers. And it doesn't surprise me, it drops. And I don't think it stopped. But let's see in 3 years' time, then I'm pretty sure it's going up again. But I don't know what it does in 20 years' time. And that's why we've gone into this process. And we would like to try to learn to grow more protein crops. The next dilemma is protein crops can only be 20% of the area. So now we have 80% of other crops, as a rotation that we also need to make a profit on. Henrik Lund naturally came with a really good example. 10 plant burgers for one meat burger. And it's true. Problem is, them plants come the nutrition from a cow, and most likely the cow is conventional. So if the cow wasn't there, there wouldn't be 10 burgers. There might only be 4 or 5. And it's not to be difficult, but it's just the truth. We need a lot of research. What rotating plants, crops can we find? How do we get the nutrition? Go and get the nutrition from the conventional neighbor in the future is going to stop, which I think is the right way to do it. But how are we going to make the nutrition? The bottom line is we could produce a lot more output per hectare conventionally and free some land for other things compared to organic. It's just a fact, unless we do some research to get the yield up on ecological farming. So,
but
yeah.
there are kind of two different discussions here. There's one like organic versus the conventional discussion about land use and so on. I think we should maybe get to that a little bit later, but I was also just interested in hearing, now that you have made these new crops and you're ready to harvest and sell, I mean, what is the challenges from your perspective in terms of, it sounds like it feels a little bit insecure whether you can actually sell it and what will the price be and so on. Is that just because it's new, or is there also some kind of challenge that's linked to the fact that it's these new products?
Well, I mean, the first challenge is we need to find some crops and some varieties that we can grow better than most people. Because if we can do that, there's a chance we can make a profit. I mean, all the things we can produce, we can basically import from other parts in the world cheaper. So the best thing was, and right on this little island on Bornholm, there was one crop that everyone would like and no one else could grow it. That was the best scenario we could come with. The world is not like that. And all this case studies there's been, it's not normal farmers, I would just say. They are really doing a big job, these people. And it's not everyone that can knock on a door down a local supermarket and sell the products to a profit. And when it comes to meat, 20% of the meat on an animal you can sell. The rest, no one wants to buy. And you can't cut a piece out of the animal and leave the rest. So I mean, there's a lot of challenges, and it's the same challenge. We would like to find some crops that we can grow really well. We need some investment to milling machines. These machines are very expensive. So if you, as a single farmer, would like to, develop your crops more and make them ready for sale, it takes big investments, and therefore we are a group of 12 farmers, and we easily can lift that job. So number one, find some crops we can be good at. Number two, get very efficient, and 3, get some machines so we can put in small bags and make a good profit. That's our challenge, and then a lot of more research in how do we grow the crops so they get the nutrition they need, and the weed control. That's also a very big problem.
So there's a lot of learning basically in how do we grow this stuff in a profitable way, and where do we sell it? And you're talking about trying to sell it more or less directly. So you want to deal with Thomas maybe rather than with the Frederik, who's also in the panel, in order to kind of skip the middleman?
Well, the problem is also, I am just a hobby farmer on full time, and I produce 5,000 pigs a year. That is nothing in pig farming in Denmark, I will just say. But I can supply 3/4 of the population on Bornholm with meat if we live after the new health advices how much meat we need. So farming is big, and when we drive out with a harvester, it's not 2-3 hectares. 2-3 hectares a hobby, there will never be money. So what we really need is some big players that really want big amounts, or we can make something that not many people can and put in small bags and sell to many. So either we have to, both ways, either way, we have to be very efficient. But that's the key. I mean, price is important. And if you can get something cheaper, the cheapest is what sets the price for the highest quality, I believe. If you can buy something cheaper, I get greedy. I say, I'll find something cheaper. So it's, I don't know, quality it has to be, but it's difficult to get the price for the quality. If low quality price is very low. I'm just a farmer, I don't know. Maybe someone can confirm I'm right.
Can I comment on it? I know that we haven't heard from Frederick, but I really like to comment on what you're saying, Jens, if it's possible, Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I do absolutely agree with you that one of the big challenges, actually, this talk about how can we envision this plant-based future is exactly what you're talking about. That I can, from a farmer perspective, I can really understand why we have been focusing so much on animals, because when you're talking about animals, you own your own factory, so to speak. You own your own value addition machine that takes what you grow in the field and you can actually put it into your animals and get a higher value out of the other end. I mean, that's the whole idea. And also the processing company, the Danish crown, or who are you delivering your pigs to? I mean, you're also partly owning that company. It's based on ownership of farmers. And actually, I think that's what we really need in the plant-based mindset, because talking about this plant-based future, well, I mean, you can easily be replaced by anyone else producing, as you say, the same input for naturally, or whoever will process your food or your products, by something that's cheaper from the Baltics or wherever in the world, basically. And that's a real challenge, I think, also because we know from our consumers that when it comes to ingredients in processed food, actually they don't really care about where they come from, and they don't want to pay extra for, say, that it comes from Bornholm or from even not from Denmark. And it's actually the same with what you feed to your pigs. I mean, no consumers really care about where the soy comes from. They probably don't even know that you're importing soy from South America for the pigs, right? It's probably only us attending this seminar today that knows that. So that's, I think, is a real challenge. How can we get this farmer ownership into this transition and make sure that the farmers actually get part of the value addition? Otherwise, I'm not very optimistic, not with the speed, at least.
No.
So can I just ask you a question there, follow-up question? Maybe I missed what you said, but what is your answer to that question? How do we give farmers a bigger share of the market value for the products they produce? That looks like one very big obstacle for farmers to be able to increase on all kinds of fronts. What's your answer to that question?
Either you should convince the companies, farmer-owned companies that are processing animal-based products today, that they should also do something with plants directly. I know that's quite a discussion probably among the shareholders of the animal-based companies. Or you should maybe restart the andelsbevægelsen. What is that called in English? I don't know. But I really don't have the solution for that. But I can, from a farmer perspective, I would be worried as well. I would have exactly the same worries I hear Jens expressing, and I'm not quite sure I have the answers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. I think we should also get Frederik Madsen from Plantebranchen into the discussion. And hi, Frederik. I'd like to also hear from you. We had a few on the producer side still, but you could maybe talk on a more general level. And I would like to hear just briefly what you think. What are the most important things that need to happen if this plant-based revolution that so many people want is actually going to take place in Denmark, and if Danish farmers and companies are going to be part of it?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to join this discussion today. I think I can answer both your question and then also tap into the discussion, if you will allow me. first I would like to comment on why Sweden seems to be more ahead than Denmark. I think in general, in Sweden, you are much more an industry country than we are. We are very much, I think many Danes are identifying themselves with farming. And in Sweden, you produce cars and you produce planes and a lot of big machines. So you're much more an industry country than we are. I think that trying to answer the question, because I think there have been so many meetings over the last couple of weeks after the summer. I think there's a kind of ketchup effect. You know, all the same people meet and discuss these issues, and we all agree that something had to be done. And today it was really a new thing, both to hear from Sweden how you can make a better production also within animal production, but also to hear from you, Jens, about all the struggling you have with your products and how to produce and how to get on with your plant-based production. And of course, when we discuss these things, we are able to list so many issues that should be solved in order to get further. And we had what we have proposed from Plantebranchen, also together with Annika and a number of other NGOs in Denmark, that we need a national, I think it's already been mentioned, a national action plan for this. And we can look into what we did when we wanted Denmark to be more organic. We made action plans for that, and there were also some supporting systems for the farmers so that they could change their production from conventional production into organic farming. So there are a lot of things we could copy paste from this learning and use and reuse. But again, we need the state to take the lead and to develop the plans together with farmers and industry and NGOs, and also come up with some funds so that we can finance the change. We had a conference this week. There was a very interesting speech from Claus Felby from the Novo Nordisk Foundation. And one issue that also Jens addressed is these small amounts that we will need in the future for our food production, with the small amounts of land. And he proposed that there should be trees instead, and the state should compensate the farmers for planting trees. And he also had some numbers that it would be a very little percentage of the whole GNP to give this kind of remuneration to the farmers. So that could be one way to go further. But still, again, he said we need NASA, like they did in the US when they wanted to go to the moon. And again, we need a NASA in Denmark from the state to really go for this and to invest into the area.
But when you just to be a little bit more concrete, when you are talking about copy pasting basically what we've done to kind of support organic farming in Denmark,
yes,
you're talking about all kinds of support for research and development. You're talking about subsidies for farmers. What kind of things?
Yeah, I'm also talking about public hospitals, public food, or hospitals. There's a lot of things that where the state could have a goal for the percentage of plant-based foods in the diets. So that there are a number of things we could do. We have made together with the green organizations a whole report with 18 concrete proposals of what to do, what could be part of an action plan. And the ideas are there. It's the same ideas we discuss all the time, but we need someone to take the lead, and we cannot do it ourselves. I'm sorry.
No, I actually agree, and I think I can add to that from the organic action plans, there was also a component of engaging with consumers and informing consumers that we could also learn from. And I think also just the sheer fact that you had an action plan and you had what was called the Nordiske fødevarehvordan, which were following the action plans, where you were sure that all the different stakeholders in the value chain were actually meeting on a regular basis. I mean, just to facilitate that kind of meeting would actually help identify where you had problems in the value chain that needs to be fixed, or where you should put your research money. Maybe it's too early to put them all in steel tanks and fermentation systems. Maybe we need something else to be fixed first. I mean, and that you can only see if you are actually sitting together, the whole value chain and all the different stakeholders, and are, as you say, committed into actually setting stretch targets together. And that was what happened with the two organic action plans, actually.
So there's a big potential for learning there. I think that's a good conclusion to take out of here. If you can kind of copy paste something you've already done, then it should be easier to do something new.
You could add to this, sorry, that we have a kind of tradition in Denmark that the state is going forward when we want to make changes. If you go 100 years back with Lurpak and bacon, it was a state program that we should sell this stuff to the UK. With the windmills, again, it was a state program, and with the organic. So we have a tradition for this. We have a lot of learnings out there. We could use all this learning again for this change, if we want.
And what about how big an issue or challenge do you think it is that we have? Maybe Jens, you have something to say here, but we have a lot of also vested interests in various ways in the industry as it is. You see parts of the labor movement who are organizing the slaughterhouse workers. You have of course all the farmers who have invested, some of them very large amounts of money with long time horizon investments in animal farming, especially pork production. And then you have all the banks that who want their money back from the farmers and so on. I mean, if you're envisioning this kind of changing what we actually produce on our fields, from animal feed to food, as the title of your report suggests, how do we overcome this kind of resistance that's probably there, or that is there in the system? And all of you can kind of weigh in, but maybe Jens, you have some interesting things to say here.
Well, if I talk about something I know a little bit about, then I know something about pigs and the whole story about that. I mean, because it is part of my company, and the research through almost 100 years have led to that we today can produce pork to a comparable price throughout the world. And that's why we can sell it. I know the story all the time. There's always someone that drives too fast on the road, and there's always some pig farmers that are suffering. And that's how it always been, and it will keep being like that. I mean, we need more research in how we can grow the crops in a economically, not only ecologisk, but economically profitable way. I believe that, so we can compete throughout the world, and that means more technology. I stopped plowing for 20 years ago. That was a bit crazy. Now I start no-till. The problem is we don't have, basically in Europe, machines to no-till, and it definitely not to clay land contains a lot of clay. I mean, there's a lot of challenges there, and I try myself and take all the money it costs. I mean, it needs a lot more research. If you go to South America, no one knows there what a plow is, so there's many other places they can work it out. But in Scandinavia, Germany too, a plow has been it. But there's a way to do it and to produce cheaper. So the bottom line is the start might be a good story, but the long story, that is we are efficient and to a low price. That's the only way I see, really. Yeah. Yeah, I can't really come with much more.
But that is, I think that's super important. That is the farmer's perspective, right? Because you are competing in a global market. That means that you can't just do what feels nice. Then you're out of business very fast. But are there any other one who wants to kind of weigh into this? That we have this huge complex business complex and an economical complex built around the meat industry, and how can we kind of, you were saying, Thomas, that maybe we need to restart the co-op movement if we can't convince Danish Crown to invest in plant-based products, but how do you kind of make the transition without creating too much resistance from people who are vested in different kind of, I mean, Jens is probably a good example that you can do both, right? You raise corn, but yeah.
If you start on the farmers level, I think we need to do both, and I think the examples that you mentioned in the report from Vanstrup, the grass milk farm, or also the Swedish example we just heard about earlier on, is good examples actually that the same farmers that's organized in a dairy, in a cooperative owned dairy, Teese Dairy, for instance, they supply a lot of the organic milk to us, but they have also the same farmers supplying the milk to the dairy. They have also started growing oat for making oat drinks, for instance. And why not take that oat and also make oatmeal and maybe some mueslis or some other products with that? So I mean, I think if you have an existing infrastructure and you're building on the same cooperative owners that's already there in the value chain, I think it's possible to do it. But of course you need to find the small jigsaw puzzles and see how they put together, and then I think it will grow from beneath, as we can see it starts to do right now. It just takes a long time, unfortunately. But start up with the existing structure, start up with the existing owners of the cooperatives, and then think about how you can actually extend what you're doing and create value without the animals as well, but within the same structure. That's one way at least. Mm. But I'd like to comment on another thing that Jens said actually that I partly disagree on. I mean, I think I'm not sure this situation where you can say the organic way of producing fewer calories or fewer pigs per unit. I mean, I'm not sure that would be the big challenge if you also look at the changing dietary habits. Maybe the bigger challenge is actually the overall constraints on and pressure on the environment from the total farming system. And therefore I think I agree with the report that we need to lower sort of the animal based part of the food system altogether, despite that some of the alternatives might have higher impact if you only measure per kilogram. But I'll actually strongly talk for instead of measuring our carbon footprint per kilogram that we produce, we should measure it from per krone, per dollar, per value addition actually, because the reason why we have such a big footprint as Western consumers is actually that we are so rich, and whatever we invest our money in comes with a carbon cost, right? So if you can actually make people, consumers, convince them into actually putting their money into something that has a lower carbon footprint per krone, that would actually be a way forward. And if you look at that on organic farming, because it comes with a higher cost per unit as well, that consumers up until now has been willing to pay, you actually have a lower carbon footprint per krone probably, or at least very equal. And also if you look at the plate of the very organic consumers, The 20% of consumers with the highest organic rate, they eat less than half the amount of meat than the 20% consumers who say that they are not buying organic at all. And just that difference will actually have a huge impact in land use. So in reality, if you look at what actually happens, consumer practice on the plate, the picture is much more complicated and not as simple as just saying carbon per produced unit, unfortunately.
So you're saying that we should basically think about what is the carbon footprint of a person's food budget rather than of a kilo of pork.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And Pim, you raised a hand here.
Well, I'd just like to add to what Thomas was saying now. I mean, there's so many big shifts in the pipeline now. I mean, we are facing the next coming decades. Things will change. I think we're realizing more and more beyond our imagination. And I mean, the dietary shift, which most people now agree on, we need to change our diets. That's one big shift which is happening. In parallel to that, we will probably also have to have quite big shifts in the global flows of food and what is grown where and for what reason. And I mean, many of the scenarios point to us in the future, point to a much more localized food production. Certain things will be traded, many things will not. For example, food for cattle from North America or South America being shipped to Europe is not part of a future sustainability. So I mean, in relation to what you're saying, Jens, in your situation and many farmers' situation, the sort of a whip of the global market will probably be there in certain ways, but it will be a different kind of whip, and hopefully it won't be as harsh as it is today. And I think add to that also the public opinion and an idea of what the agricultural sector is and what they do also needs to change. I mean, Corona helped us a little bit there, people realizing what the farmers are the ones who actually put food on our tables. It's helped more people to realize that. So to what extent, what is the assignment that society gives to the farmers? I mean, the assignment they've had now for 70 years is maximum yield to lowest price. That's what we paid for. But what if we start giving them another assignment? And we've started with, environmental, you get a little pat on your shoulder if you do this and that in the sort of through CAP. But if we actually change the assignment and we look at the agriculture sector as actually taking care of big parts of our landscapes and our ecosystems, just like the forestry sector does, then how much will the market be paying for? And how much do we actually have to be paying for from public money? Because you're producing public goods beyond food. So I think, all these things are happening at once, right? And that's the difficulty now. So what do we do now? When will the window of opportunity come for rapid shift? We need to keep all these things sort of in parallel to each other. I'd also like to thank Frederick for the very enlightening historical perspective on the difference between Sweden and Denmark. I think there's a lot in that, as you said, the industrial country. We kind of fall in line in Sweden, and we are more disattached from our farmers than the Danes are. I would definitely agree.
And Frederick, you raised the hand also.
Yes, just to comment on what Thomas said about infrastructure. Yes, we do have the infrastructure in place, but the thing is that it's based on these very big amounts of corn and meat and crops, whatever. And the infrastructure for the small amounts that Jens is talking about, it's not really in place. So this is one of the big struggles we have. And then you asked, I think that your question was about resistance. How can we overcome the resistance? And going back again to Claus Felby, what he said, the two biggest issues, one is behavior, and the other, what we are used to do, and the other is price. And we could maybe in this context talk about money, because of course, if you are a farmer and you have invested a lot of money in your production facility for pigs, and you have to change it for something quite different, and you will also need a small amount of land. Of course, we need to have some programs to help these farmers out of the debts and into a new way to produce food. I think one goal we should have for this change should also be that we should have that our farmers should have a better economy than they have today, because really many farmers have debts, and they also have a generation issue, probably also because of debts. So we should also have a more healthy business environment for farmers. That should also be a kind of goal for the whole change of our food system.
One final thing I would like to kind of throw in here is because I think it's important to discuss in this kind of context is, and it's also been going on in the chat here a little bit, about how should we think about extensification, you could say. Organic farming is a kind of making agriculture less intensive. And Kaiser had a very nice presentation about what happens in a unit of land if you start producing something else, and importantly, less of it. But there's also a global dimension to this. And then you can say, yes, as these cases in the report show, you could produce fewer animals on a given farm that still have animals, and then you could produce other crops that are for human consumption, and then you can actually feed more people from the same area. And that's obviously correct, but you could also say, well, yes, but then you're also putting less meat into the market, and somebody else is likely going to produce that. You can't just automatically assume that because you are putting you are changing what you're producing on your unit of land, that will also change what is being consumed out there. So there's kind of a tension there. How should we think about that? And I think Fredrik has maybe thought about this a little bit, or quite a lot, I think, and I know this debate has been quite heated in Sweden, right, between organic farming and how much do you get out per hectare and so on. So yeah, how should we think about that? Do you get what I'm saying?
It was a very long question.
Yeah.
I mean, you asked a couple of questions there, Thomas. One was what happens when if I at my farm change how I produce and what I sell, someone else might come in and do it in a poor way, and therefore keep, and I won't be able to sell my product. I mean, that's the world we live in. So I mean, as you were talking about earlier, shifts are happening in parallel now, and we have to somehow have some kind of trust in that the system will move in a way where sort of more sustainable farming practices will become more and more attractive to consumers. I mean, if that doesn't happen, then we're screwed anyway. So I mean, we have to somehow rely on that kind of a process. We can't just be sort of cynical and see that I can't do anything better because then someone else will do bad.
But I'm also asking, I guess, do these extensive systems need to be a part of the solution? Because from an overall perspective, what is needed in order to help both climate change and biodiversity is more nature and less farming.
Yeah, that was your second question, right? And that, I mean, there's many people here who are probably experts in this, and we could all say something about it. I mean, we have so many aspects to that. One is the central trade-off between climate and biodiversity. How much does there need to be a trade-off? Is there a trade-off? I mean, oats, even if they're organic, they're not ecosystem builders. It's a monoculture. Cows, held in the right way, are ecosystem builders, which enhance biodiversity. So how do we do with that? But then another one is land sparing versus land sharing, which we've been into here. Should we be intensive here to plant forests there, or should we try to create multiple values across the board? And yeah, this is a rife debate, but I think, as the examples in the chat showed, I think the what we in Sweden refer to as avkastningsnormen, so translated as the yield norm, is a very important question to discuss. I think we have many decades of a very strong maximum yield norm, and we today know the results of that. Farmers have had that goal always. Who wouldn't want to have a maximum yield? But we have to now talk about maximum yield of what values, and how do we maximize the right bouquet or palette of values which we need to keep our ecosystems vital enough to support us. And I mean, I think few would disagree that maintaining a focus on maximum yield of a certain crop on a, you know, intensely here, and then, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic, and I would like to hear the other speakers' perspectives as well.
Yeah, I can try to share my thoughts. I mean, this question about intensification, hasn't it always been the case that you have tried to maximize not the yield necessarily, but the value that you can get out of your production? I mean, go back to 1945, look at the Danish agriculture in 1945. We fed 20 million people in 1945, including actually 200,000 horses. I mean, which was used as a machinery, right? Right now, we feed the same amount of people, but we just maximize the value. I mean, all the increased yields, we've used that to produce more animals instead of more products for direct human consumption. So the number of mouths that we actually can feed hasn't actually developed since 1945 and until today. But the value of what we make and the intensity in which we make it, and you know, with fewer and fewer input and fewer people, we produce it. But really, intensification, I think it's the wrong question to discuss, because it's always been a question of yield in value and not necessarily in calories, from my perspective. Also, I think it's a very dangerous track to follow, to keep focusing on that we need to intensify what we're doing. First of all, I think it's naive to think that if we do that, we'll free up land or free land to nature, because what will landowners use that land for? Probably not nature, unless they're paid for it. They'll use it for growing something even more intensely, right? I mean, we've been 4 times as efficient in what we produce in our fields during the last 50 years. So basically, we could take the whole jobland and just leave it to nature and produce the same amount as we did 50 years ago, which was enough for, as I said, 18, 20 million people. But we don't do that because it's different logics that drives what we're using our land for. Also, I think intensification always has this, I've called it the Jevons paradox, if you know that whenever you intensify a production, you also lower the costs of that product. You can see the price drops on pork meat on the world market. Just look 50 years back. I mean, it's a tremendous development you've seen, but actually the demand has just increased. So the problem for the ecosystem as such hasn't actually diminished because we've been more efficient. No, actually the production has just increased with the efficiency gains, because now you can sell even more. I know there's a maximum number of people on this planet, but I just think we should look at the answers in different ways or different areas than just talking about intensification.
So just to wrap up, it sounds like that whatever kind of thinking you prefer in this subject, it's like there's a need for policy, right? There's a need for,
absolutely.
Intensification could be a good idea environmentally if there was a cap on farmland, but there's not. And extensification could be a good way forward if there was some kind of mechanism to ensure that people actually ate less meat.
Exactly.
But neither would kind of have the impact.
Nothing would happen by itself. You need structure. You need exactly.
Jens, final comment maybe?
Yeah, well, I'll just say, as a farmer, you look at like Maersk, or a big shipping company in Denmark. Why do we have to ship around the world? That's sort of how we look at things. Should we just sail around Denmark? Should Novo Nordisk only make medicine to Denmark? I mean, that is 2 major companies in Denmark. There's a whole welfare. That's how a farmer look. We produce pork, we produce milk and cheese and so forth to make an income to Denmark. That's how we look. When that's said, I would say every farmer who can find a profit in something will make it. You could change the Scandinavian farming within 5 years if there was something there was a profit in, but it's long-term investment, and that is also a challenge. And in the 25 years I have been a farmer, there have been many smart people that's not here anymore, and I'm still here. So we don't jump in, jump out with no parachute. We gotta be sure we're also here in 5 years' time. And the pig prices are dropping now. I don't feel insecure. Thanks.
Great.
All right, thank you very much, all. I think we are nearing the end here, and we are set to finish at 3:30, and it's 3:30 now. So maybe Annika, you want to just have some concluding remarks, and yeah, if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here, of course. I'm listening, and I'm just very, very happy that the four of you and you, Thomas, wanted to join today and give your perspectives. I think, at least, I mean, I've been invested in this discussion for years, and I've learned something new today. So I hope that our participants have also listened and learned something, and will go out, and they certainly do not. And will go out and help in this transition towards a more sustainable production system and food system, really. And I'm inspired by the ideas that I've heard here, that I've heard today. There's a lot of energy and innovation and people wanting to do something. So I think most people here today participating are in some way involved in this work, and I'm sorry for the background noise. And I just look forward to working on this with you all. So thank you so much for coming today, and I hope you will read our report, at least some of it, and find inspiration in our recommendations. And if you have the time, please join us on next Friday, where we're actually talking about the common agricultural policy and how it affects this transition, because it is a large amount of money, and where that money goes is important. Yeah, so thank you all, and have a great afternoon, and thank you for coming. And thank you to the panelists for joining us today.